Thanks, Paul, and thanks to Reed Corporate for putting on this event and everyone for coming down or tuning in. Just a quick summary of Gateway and hopefully make you all enthused as we are. Usual disclaimer. So what's Gateway? Where are we? So we're located the Gidgee Greenstone Belt, which is about 800 k's north of Perth. We've got about 1,000 square kilometres of tenure there, which is a pretty significant land holding in a pretty significant part of Western Australia. We're right in the middle of several multi-million ounce producing gold mines, which puts us in a pretty unique location. The Gidgee Greenstone Belt itself we see as a neglected greenstone belt. Really, it's been forgotten about for the last 15, 20 years since production ceased on the Gidgee gold mine next door. And we've got a series of old deposits which were mined there in the late 80s and early 90s, which have really seen nothing since about the mid-90s exploration-wise. So the type of exploration we're doing now is we're really targeting shallow mineralisation, 3 main target areas on our project area, but we're looking at stuff that's basically at surface or down about 200 metres. We've got existing resources there, so underneath 2 of those old pits we've got about 120,000 ounces each at about 2.2 grams under the Whistler and Montague Boulder pits, and they're just remnant resources, not really extending very far, down to about 150 metres below surface. What we're doing now is we're really starting to establish the fact that this is a large-scale gold system. The Montague Granodiorite dome there, from a geological point of view, is a really interesting feature, sort of a classic WA-style gold system. And so we're now starting to explore this thing as a whole system rather than just around all the old deposits. So we see a clear pathway for resource growth there. One of the keys with Gateway now is that we're well funded for this type of exploration we want to do. So we've got about just under $9 million in cash with no debt. And that enables us to really get the drill rigs out there and go pretty hard at this project. We're right now just at the tail end of a 30,000 metre RC and aircore program, which we commenced back in mid-July. That'll go through to basically start of December. There's been a few delays with getting assay results and the like back, but really that news flow from that program will be coming through over the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, right through to January. And then we're about to kick off in February. We've already secured a drill rig to get back out there, and our plan is really to be drilling about 10 months of next year. So there's a lot of holes being put in the ground out there, and there'll be a lot of news coming through. And the last key feature for Gateway there is our management team, our technical team, very experienced and successful, with a track record of not only corporate success but exploration discoveries. So the corporate summary there, the usual sort of slide. Market cap about $38 million, as I mentioned, just under $9 million in cash at the end of last quarter. One of the keys there is our major shareholders. So the top 20 Gateways controls about 40% of the register, and our biggest shareholder there, Kerry Hermanis, just under 11%. But our top 20 is very stable. They're all there for the long haul. They're all there as part of the strategy. So what is that strategy? Well, you can see there we're Gidgee Gold Project in orange, where we're located. So north of Sandstone in the Gidgee Greenstone Belt, as I mentioned. And we've been able to consolidate through fairly low-cost means a pretty significant landholding there, about 1,000 kilometres squared. We've got an existing data set that we've inherited from the old operations in the late 80s, early 90s, which we've been adding to systematically over time. We've been able to use that to really have a look at this thing in detail and pull it apart and look for where we can take it. So we've been able to establish initial resources there last year, a bit of drilling under the old pits at Whistler and Montague, the 2 biggest pits mined there in the past. Established about 240,000 ounces at 200 grams. That's in no way closed off. It's really shallow. We're only talking 150 odd metres below surface. And there's drilling programs been underway looking at the immediate extensions there at Montague, as well as some pretty systematic step-outs from the Montague Boulder resource area. And one of our aims is to build up a pipeline of targets here at Gidgee. So previously all the exploration's been focused around a lot of old workings and things that come to surface. We're there looking for not only those advanced targets where we can put drill holes and add to our resources, but really building up the bigger picture there. And we're pretty convinced we're part of a big gold system there, and it really needs those holes in the ground to delineate the big resources. Quick slide there on the management team. Pete Langworthy, the Managing Director, basically took hold of the company about 2 years ago, Gateway previously was an East Coast-based company, and the Gidgee project, as it was then, was a bit of a token WA project, but now the company's been refocused, purely looking at WA gold at Gidgee, and we're now recapitalising on our way. So the main feature at Gidgee is the Montague Dome. So this is a granite intrusion into a major gold hosting shear zone. You can see there one of the key analogues in WA as it is at the moment is the King of the Hills deposit, which Red 5 are currently developing. Those two images there are at the same scale, so the same sort of geological feature. Tarmoola there, King of the Hills, about 5 million ounces in size, and you can see on the left there the Montague Dome and the existing drill database of those 5 main deposits there in the pink areas. One of the key features of our database is that a lot of the drilling that's been done in the past is really just around those old pits. So if we pull away everything less than 50 metres deep, what we can see is that pretty much all the drilling there has been around these old 5 little pits which were mined back in the late 80s. So only about 10% of our current database is what we'd call effective drilling for this part of the world. So as I mentioned before, we're right at the tail end of this major drilling program. We set off in mid-July. The first thing we did was really to look at a couple of key areas of this Montague Dome where we were starting to get understanding of the geological framework and what we thought was a big gold system, and we wanted to see what exactly was the potential there. So we stepped out between the Whistler and Montague boulder pits there and put a traverse there we called Whistler West up on the northwest margin, which is a pretty key area in this feature. Put a series of RC holes there to get down below the transported cover and have a look. We did a bit of drilling around the existing Montague boulder resource. We thought we delineated some controls on high-grade mineralisation there. We wanted to test it. We did a bit more drilling at Achilles, which is a name that we give to a cluster of deposits there around the old Rosie pit. And then we also did two traverses at the Kashmir prospect, which is down the southeast corner of the project. And this is a pretty key area because it sits immediately along strike from the Howards deposit there, which is owned by Horizon Gold. There's a 200,000 ounce resource there that comes up to surface and still unmined. We had a big soil anomaly there immediately along strike on our side of the tenement boundary, but had never had a drill hole into it. So we put a couple of 1 kilometre spaced traverses down there. So we've reported all these results to the ASX now. We're pretty happy with how that whole thing turned out. Last week we announced a series of results from a pretty big aircore program we kicked off in August. That aircore program was testing south along strike of the Achilles prospect. So to the north we'd tested with RC. So south of that Rosie pit we used aircore as our main way of testing, and we tested about a 1.4 kilometre strike length of that same structure which we'd established was hosting near surface mineralisation up to the north. As we'll go through in a minute, those results were highly encouraging, delineating a big 1.4 kilometre long anomaly, which we'll then look to test next year. And we're right at the tail end of a 11,000 metre RC program, which really is focused on that northwest margin of the Montague Granodiorite Dome, and that's where the majority of mineralisation to date's been delineated. We did that traverse earlier in July, which showed us that there was mineralisation away from the existing resources, but really it was the same structures and the same rock types. So now we've launched into a pretty systematic program up there where we're drilling essentially every 100 metres along that contact, looking for this high-grade boulder-style mineralisation. So the northwest margin, this is the traverse we did back in mid-July at Whistler West. You can see there we basically tested right across from the Whistler pit, which is in the top right of that picture, all the way across to that western contact of the granodiorite being in pink and the mafics there in light green. And what we're looking for is the two different styles of mineralisation in this neck of the woods, which is quite discrete shear zones in the mafics, as well as these sort of sheeted vein complexes in the granodiorite, which is what hosts mineralisation at Whistler. And as those results show on the slide, we're pretty excited by what we saw. We intersected the structures as we thought we would. Best results we got there was 6 metres at 6 grams. But the key thing with this picture to sort of point out is that that's 1.1 k's north of that existing mineralisation at Montague Boulder. So that's a pretty substantial step out. You can see the other holes on that picture, that's everything greater than 50 metres deep. There's a series of old workings in the area, but but really it hasn't been tested. So that's about all up about 1.6 k's of strike there north of the Montague boulder pit. That's what that section looks like. So you can see over in the mafics there on the left-hand side, shallow dipping shear zones within the basalt sequence, and these sort of flat sheeted veins within the granodiorite. And you can see there that 6 metres at 6, that's from about 60 metres below surface. So we're not talking about deep mineralisation here. It comes basically all the way up to about 5-6 metres below surface. Next thing we did in this area is we tested these high-grade controls on mineralisation at the Montague boulder resource. That's an inferred resource, was put together as a mixture of old existing data and some drill holes that Gateway put in back in 2018 and 19. But we thought there was some real controls on the high grades there that weren't incorporated in that resource estimate. So we put down 2 holes to test this new interpretation, and we can see there from the results in holes 525 and 526, 9 at 5 and 4 at 16, we're pretty successful at proving that theory, if you like, and so that'll enable us now. We're also, as part of the current drill program, putting a series of holes into this to basically flesh out these high-grade domains and upgrade the confidence in this resource estimate. Again, in section you can see very similar to what we looked like at Whistler West, 1.1 k's to the north. Same geometry, it's the same shear zone in the same rock types. So we're pretty comfortable that we've got continuity there along that whole northwest margin. So the second priority area for us is at Achilles. This is down a bit further to the south of that northwest margin, basically between that Rosie pit there, the old Caledonian northeast pit, and the Caledonian pit. So a series of structures on this western contact of the granodiorite. The Rosie pit itself is on a little, oh not a little, it's quite a decent thrust fault, but it was a little pit mine there, just oxide zone pit. Gateway has been stepping out north of that pit with RC drilling. You can see there some pretty shallow mineralisation to date that's been delineated, so 13 metres at 3.4 from 5 metres below surface and 21 metres at 2 from 32 metres. So this is all unmined material sitting right there in the oxide zone. We stepped out with 2 traverses, each 150 metres further along strike to really have a look at how far does this thing go, is it still mineralised out there, and we hit same style of mineralisation there, 6 metres at 1.5, 4 metres at 1 gram from almost surface, so 14 metres at 1 gram from almost surface. So we got good confidence that that structure is continuous the whole way up towards that Caledonian northeast pit. We'll come back and start systematically drilling this area next year, and with a view to putting our first sort of resource numbers around it. So, as I mentioned before, south of that area there, we used an air core rig to really test a big mob of ground there to see if that structure persists further south, and can see from the results we got there, we were pretty successful in delineating that same structure and showing that the gold mineralisation is continuous along it. So, some pretty encouraging results there from an air core point of view. This is all down to blade refusal, so basically down to the top of fresh rock. Best results there at Achilles is at 3 at 5.6 metres in the bottom of hole, including a metre at 16 grams. That's basically from about 20 metres below surface. We can see on that diagram on the bottom right, which is coloured by gold endowment, that same structure which hosts the mineralisation at Rosie and then north Achilles continues down, and we're really excited about that change in direction there around that LA International deposit or old LA International prospect. This is a good geological setting for significantly thicker mineralisation. We're planning on coming back and testing this with RC next year. But the other thing it'll enable us to do is to have a look at this old airport prospect, which had been drilled by Gateway a number of years ago. Some pretty significant mineralisation there near surface, 20 metres at 15 grams from 25 metres below surface, 17 metres at 15 from 30 metres, but we never really understood why that was sitting there. And now with this systematic drilling program that we put down, we can see how it fits into the scheme of things, and that's going to enable us to really go and explore this whole corridor pretty hard for airport-style mineralisation, as well as the bigger picture thrust shear zone that continues south of Rosie. So our third priority area, which is a bit more of a greenfields prospect at this stage, is at Kashmir. I mentioned before we were drilling a soil anomaly, which is a long strike of the Howards deposit there, which is Horizon Gold's just the other side of the tenement boundary. This soil anomaly sitting there for about 12, 18 months. There's not really any drilling in there testing it. There's a little bit of shallow rab that didn't get below the transported cover. So we went and put 2 1 kilometre spaced RC traverses there, really to have a look what the rocks look like and hopefully show there's some mineralisation. We can see we intersected 2 metres at 8 grams from 3 metres below surface, and a metre at 9 grams from 60 metres. So these are all fresh rock intersections. This is not some sort of supergene effect, but it was the same structure in the same rock type. So what we've shown there is there's mineralisation, at least a kilometre between those drill sections, but also there's another 2 kilometres north to some old workings up there at Yale Lock. So this whole southeastern contact of Kashmir is prospective for high-grade mineralisation. As well as that, we intersected a bit of mineralisation within the Granodiorite, so very consistent with what we see up in the northwest corner of the Montague dome. And that's really opened up this entire east contact of the dome. Only rudimentary drilling done there by CRA back in the mid-80s, very shallow, quite ineffective, and we're able to now come back and explore this entire strike length, about 8 kilometres we've got there of untested ground. The other thing we've been working on over the last 6 months, 9 months is really to build that project, as I mentioned, by low-cost means. We've done a series of deals, pegged some open ground. We most recently did a deal with Golden Mile Resources off to the west. We saw the strategic importance of this ground. You can see on the right-hand side of that diagram, that's our Montague domain, as we call it, which we've got about 60 odd k's of strike length there. That shear zone is endowed with about $1 million ounces of resources to date that's been discovered and mined. The Gidgee structure in the middle there, that Horizon Gold have, that's about 2 million ounces endowment. This third structure to the west, what we call the Woodley domain, really hasn't been explored in the past. There's some old historic exploration results in this area which are pretty significant, 40 metres at 3 grams from surface and 20 metres at 2.5 grams from surface, with no real follow-up, some old workings poking out of the ground, but this area is highly neglected, and we saw it as a great opportunity to get in there for a pretty low-cost deal and have a really exciting place to be exploring for the future. So the key investment takeaways from Gateway, we're WA focused. It's probably one of the premier places to be exploring for gold in the world, not just in Australia. There's a proven endowment in our neck of the woods, both in these series of old pits that were mined and the resources that we've been able to put around them, but also with the work we've done recently. There's minimal modern exploration being done. We're really going into an area that has been neglected for the last 15, 20 years, and we're targeting shallow mineralisation, high-grade mineralisation. This is not deep drilling, this is not expensive drilling, and likewise goes for potential exploitation. It's really easy stuff to get at. We've got existing resources at the moment, about 240,000 ounces at 2 and a bit grams, just some remnants under these old pits, but really we see significant room there to expand those resources and add to them. We're well funded with a strong balance sheet. We've got the money to do this systematic exploration, and we're just coming to the end of a major drilling push, which you'll see those results coming through and being reported over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And we've got an experienced and successful management team to carry out this work and take the company forward. So, thank you.
Thanks very much, Mark. We have one quick question in respect to the resource.
Yep.
Somebody has asked, can you provide a bit more detail on the timing of when we might see an update there?
Yeah, so Montague Boulder resource, we're currently doing some drilling at the moment, which is infilling around those high-grade shoots and extending them a bit deeper. That drilling's still not complete, but will be in the next few weeks. So, results will be coming back probably to the end of the year, and then so we're looking sort of in the first half, maybe in the first quarter, but definitely in the first half of next year, putting out some updated numbers there.
Thanks very much, Mark.
Thanks, Paul.